So welcome to Educators Speak. This is our second session here. Julia is going to give you the formal welcome in a moment for the Boggs School. But we're excited. How many people were here 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. Okay, you remember that was spicy, right? That was a spicy conversation, and a lot of stuff came up, and we will have a video of that session put on our website, on our webpage. Not up yet, but it will be. But I'm going to hand the mic to Bryanda because we have a little bit of time to kind of think back 2 weeks ago before we start tonight's session.
Hey y'all, my name is Bryanda. I'm a junior at the University of Michigan. Can y'all hear me well?
Yeah.
Bryanda, I'm a junior at USM, and I'm working with the semester Rethinking Education team and helping organize the Rethinking Education Justice class. So we just want to start out with a little bit of a reflection and recap of last session where we were talking about the messy logistics of curriculum planning, and just to get any feedback or comments, critiques that anybody had that they didn't have the opportunity to share.
Can we see it from here?
Yeah.
Okay. I really respect everybody that was out there on the panel, and I want to bring light to the importance of standards that we have, that we do need to, that they are there. There was some comments made about there is no standards for K through 8. However, that is very untrue. What I think is important to note that some of those standards aren't what the Boggs School, because I'm part of the Boggs School as well, highlight as an importance of being a critical thinker in our community. So there are standards that we highlight more than others and feel the need to learn more. Even, and one thing, right before this we had the state of Boggs School, and there was some information about how we did on state testing. And I think, yes, those numbers show us what we can grow in, but the standards are based off, are with that testing. So when you look at Boggs, when you look at any school, and you see how they're performing, it's based off the tests that are based off the standards. And I just appreciate, I just also want to put out there that don't take those pieces of assessment data, the end all be all for a school, because there's so much more to being a human than those assessments.
Yes. Yes.
But I get, sorry, but just to clarify, you're saying last time it was said that there are no standards, you're saying there are standards.
Absolutely.
That, okay, gotcha.
For the state of Michigan, there's K through 12 standards.
Yeah, no, I think I just wanted to clarify, because last time it was.
That was shared, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
There's standards, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else with a comment? Okay, well, we can transition into starting the program with Julia reintroducing y'all to the Boggs School.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the James and Grace Lee Boggs School. So if you were here last time, this is a reintroduction. If you are new to the Boggs School, you should know that this is a K-8 school. We are named after James and Grace Lee Boggs. There's a picture of them right there. The founders were inspired by their idea that you learn through community building. Our mission is to nurture creative, critical thinkers who contribute to the well-being of their communities. We use a place-based model of learning here so that the content standards that do exist are embedded in the ways that we engage with the community, both in and outside of the school. And our idea is that the community is the school and the school is the community, and that school is the institution that should facilitate a pathway to freedom. And so that's where you are. We have been here this is our 12th year of operation, and we're very excited to welcome Detroit to speak to our space, and look forward to it. The topic for today, so what you all may have gleaned if you weren't here, is last time's topic was about who tells schools what to teach and why, and how those decisions get made. And this time, we hope to have a very robust discussion again. We welcome spicy. Grace would say we're struggling. Isn't it great? Because you grow through struggle. So this time we're going to hear from young people about what they've learned in school, what they believe they need to learn and hope to learn to face the future, which is a future that is very different from that any of us have faced before. And the question is, why aren't we asking young people what they need to know to face this future? So tonight we're going to do that. We're going to scoot down a little bit so that you all can see the two people who are joining us via Zoom. But I'll start with who's in front of you on the panel. Bryanda introduced herself already. Bryanda is also a former intern at the Boggs School, and gave us great insights into what she noticed about school compared to what she grew up with. Bryanda Washington, right? First name, last name. We're gonna need to know your name, so here it is. We also have Willow LaGrew. You should introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Willow LaGrew. I'm a former Boggs student and a current student at Detroit School of the Arts, a DPSCD public school, and I'm a current aftercare teacher here.
Okay, Nakaya or Jacob, one of you, did you all decide who needs to go first? Rock, paper, scissors? Okay, Nakaya.
Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Nakaya German. I am a freshman political science major and theater arts minor at Howard University, and I attended the Boggs School from 2nd grade through 8th grade.
I'm Jacob. I'm a marketing major at Michigan State. I went to Boggs from 3rd to 8th grade.
Okay, so we're going to transition into the questions for the panelists now. The first thing that I'm going to ask is something that a lot of us think about when we exit K-12 while we're going through it, is what are some of the opportunities that you wish you'd gotten out of school or things that you wish you had learned? Does anybody want to start first?
I believe it was a kind of, I'm sorry, I don't know, just me.
It is the first question, if you got the email today, it's the first question in the email. That's what Brandon, we can mess with the sound of this, and it might be a little bit tough, but you may have to talk a little bit closer to the mic, Brandon, when you're talking about it.
Okay, well, as for my experience from Boggs, I will honestly say Boggs gave me experiences that I'm not sure I may have gotten at any other schools. Boggs, I was able to travel with them to DC on a leadership conference. I was able to learn about the people in the community on the east side of Detroit, the history of Sophie Wright settlement. So I got a lot of opportunities from Boggs. Some things that I wish I would have gotten. I mean, I truly don't know. We had such a sense of community. Instead of like suspension, we had community building circles. I can speak for at my high school experiences. That's when I transferred to DPS high schools. I wish my first two high schools I had more of a community aspect, I think that was some of my issues with my first two high schools. It's no shade or anything to those schools, but I think my first two schools specifically, I was very used to the loving aspect and just such a nurturing community that I think that's something I lacked at my first two schools. But the school that I graduated from, which was Miracle High School, I think I got that back. But other than that, I think I had pretty great experiences in school.
I can go next. I feel like I agree. We got a lot of good things from Boggs. Some things that I think I wish we would have gotten that we didn't is just general information about life as we get older. And as an adult, I know Boggs is mostly around middle school, but I think school in general could include more useful information about life in general, not just getting to college and then getting a job.
Okay, I think first and foremost, I wish in my public school experience I had gotten more of a sense of like community and connection. I was really used to that at Boggs, as Nakia said, and there was a very stark difference going into public school and just feeling like I'm not connected to the people above me or like the general community. It felt more like I was operating in like just a school system, a place rather than a community. And another thing I wish I got in from public school is like the encouragement to like have my own autonomy and like advocate for myself.
I wish I got. I think I agree with everything that they mentioned about like the community aspect because, like you said, you had no connection to the people above or below you. When I came to Boggs, I noticed that there are like a few classes that are like, I don't know the proper word, but like cross grades. Like if you're in science and you're in 6th grade, you'll probably also be in a class with 7th graders. And I think that did a lot to like bridge this divide that school has a tendency to make kids feel like somebody who's 1 year older than you is just like a generation apart when we really aren't. And I would have liked that if in public school. And then I also feel like just the communal aspect of like having teachers who really care about you, but also not feeling like teachers are the only advocates that you could have in the school. Your classmates, your peers are looking out for you. Your teachers are looking out for you. The parents, even the parents of kids that you don't even know, are also looking out for you. And I think that's something I kind of like admired when I was coming to Boggs, and then comparing to my own experience and my nephew's experience in DPS. So speaking of DPS in Boggs School, I actually want to try to compare more and contrast y'all experiences within Detroit Public Schools and the Boggs. Like, what did you experience? What did the experiences prepare you for? What differences did you notice between you and your peers, and like who grew up in DPS or other types of charter schools that kind of mimic the structure of DPS? And like, how did y'all differ socially and academically?
I guess I can start. I would say the first thing that comes to mind at Boggs, as a student, you were very encouraged to have a voice. And if there was a problem, everybody knows our thing is to be a solutionary. And I think my first 2 years in high school, that was a drastic difference. There would be issues, but I wouldn't feel as comfortable being vocal about those issues. I didn't feel like the same, as we like to say, safe space. I think Boggs was very encouraging of like, if there's an issue, then you can be honest and say, hey, I don't like this, but instead of just complaining about it, I do have a solution or I do have a suggestion. But more than that, I think also Boggs was very focused on being hands-on with their students. So beyond just encouraging us to be leaders and be solutionaries, if we were having issues at home and that reflected in how we were acting or behaving at school, the first solution wasn't suspension, which was another thing when I got to DPS. I was like, suspension is normal. I was like, that was a shocker because I had never been suspended at Boggs. And if someone was suspended at Boggs, it was like a last resort. Like we would have community building circles and healing circles about what can we do as a student body, what can we do as a school, as a family to make this problem not an issue anymore. And transferring to DPS, it took a long time until I got to Marygrove to be in a space where I was like, well, we can be vocal again if we have issues. We can be confident enough to bring them forth to the table and not feel like we're going to get punished for being honest about something.
I definitely agree with that. Similarly to that, I feel like Boggs did a great job of preparing us to like be used to people with different identities than us. There was a lot of different kinds of people that were students at Boggs or worked at Boggs, were in the community of Boggs. And I think growing up with that and going into later stages of my life, I noticed that between me and my peers, I'm more used to dealing with people that are different than me. You know, I might not be as phased up at it as they are. One thing I think Boggs didn't prepare us as much for is like the schoolwork of actually being in high school. Especially I went to Cass Tech, so they have a pretty decent workload. And I want to say up until like middle school, like 7th, 8th grade at Boggs, we really didn't get that much homework. And that was good because it allowed us to focus on other things. But like once I got to high school, I just wasn't as used to making time every night to do my assignments and you know.
I think I agree with everything said. One thing for me was just how similar to community, how cared for I felt here by my general community and my teachers and my peers, and then going into DPSCD and just feeling like my compliance was more important. They valued my compliance more than I feel like they valued us as students and caring about us as students and building a community. And did you also want us to compare our peers, or was that a different question? Okay. And in terms of the difference between Boggs students and some other peers who might have grew up from DPS through kindergarten or any grade, I guess. I notice with me and at my school, there's a lot of other Boggs kids as well. More willingness to critically think about things and to treat the people around them as a community, even if it doesn't really feel like it. We walk through our school as if okay, this is our community. We treat it like our community. And yeah. I know I'm talking a lot, but I wanted to say one thing. Academically, I think I heard from other people being oh, maybe Boggs isn't as academically focused or whatever because they're focused on the community aspect, but I always disagreed with that. And when I went into 10th grade, I moved to the school I'm at now, and I remember my teacher, the 9th grade English teacher at the time, I had her for another class, and she would always talk about how she loved the Boggs School students because we were so good at, we were really good writers. And one time I was just hanging out for lunch in her classroom, and she was like, "Did this kid go to Boggs?" And I was like, "I don't know who that is." And she was like, "Oh, they were just such a good writer." She genuinely thought they must be a Boggs student. And so I think in a lot of ways we were just as academically prepared as our peers, and being able to critically think is a big thing.
Well, I kind of want to build on that.
Are there things that you all wish were incorporated into the curriculums that y'all had to like learn from when you went to high school? Anything academically that may have even been inspired by things that you were learning at Boggs? So is there any are there any topics that you wish were incorporated into the curriculums when you went to high school in like a completely different district?
I think Boggs was very good at being hands-on and, like I said, community-based. So when we had projects and assignments, and say in science we were talking about agriculture, food, like we had people in our communities who were very experienced with that. I remember we had, I remember my grandmother in the very early years would come and do food demonstrations at Boggs, and sometimes that would reflect in our lesson plans. Or if we had a science project, we would go on I remember we went on boat field trips, or when we were learning about Phragmites, we went to Eastern and we presented about that. So I think one thing that was very key for me is being able to retain information, learning it, doing the bookwork, being hands-on, and then possibly having an experience like a field trip or a presentation to help solidify that information. When I got to high school, it felt like the only thing mattered was that book, that test, or that essay. And I was like, I don't know how else to retain the information because I was so used to like, okay, we're gonna learn it with the book, but we're also gonna apply it to life or how it can be applied to our lives. So I think that's something I wish was applied more in high school. I think it kind of reflects what Jacob said a little bit earlier. One thing I don't think Boggs prepared me for was just like the rigor a little bit in high school. In math, I would say math, I was prepared because we had Miss Trina didn't play no games. But sometimes in other subjects, I feel like I was like, I gotta move a little bit quicker because they aren't as willing to like slow down a bit, and that was sometimes it would throw me off. But I really, really do appreciate like the hands-on experience, and I think as a visual learning, the Boggs did really good with allowing us to be able to apply certain things to real life, and then not just learn it from a book or a text, like I said.
Eli, did you just ask what a
I definitely agree with that. I noticed that the type of learning is different at places other than Boggs. I think I prefer the way Boggs teaches more, but it is just something that takes time to adapt to. I felt like for me, I was well prepared in every subject. When I got to high school, I didn't feel like Boggs neglected anything, but yeah, it was definitely just a change in the type of learning and the way you retain the information.
I'm sorry, Nakaya, but there's a college student here who'd like to know what a Phragmite is. College graduate who does not know what a Phragmite is. Can you please explain?
So a Phragmite, it's a plant, it's a species, and we did a whole project on it in Miss Jacinth's class. So basically, it's a perennial. It's a type of plant. It can be invasive in certain areas, but if you ever go to Allen Park in Michigan, like that Target, it has that whole, you'll see the Phragmites. It's a big plant. It looks like oh grandma, what is it called? It looks like that. I don't know what the other plant is, but you'll see it's a perennial. It's a species. It's a plant.
Is it a cattail? It looks like a cattail.
Yeah, like it's very long, very tall. Yeah.
So Nakaya's group learned that in order to get rid of the invasive species of a Phragmite, ghosts eating them actually gets rid of them for good. Am I right?
Yeah. No, wait, what? I'm sorry. No, that's not.
Is that not accurate? That's what I thought the Wendy group got to present about. That
I don't remember anything about those.
I have been telling that story forever. Okay, we know what Phragmites are, but forget the ghost part.
But one thing that I can tell you is that they can lower water levels or alter water flow. I don't know where you got ghosts from. That wasn't my group though. Are they talking still?
Willow just wanted a reminder of the question. What topics do you wish for like in the DPS curriculum after you left Boggs?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, we're not, Willow's about to answer the question. Can you hear that?
I think Jacob said this earlier, but like general life skills, like finances, I think they just introduced that into the curriculum, but it was for the grade who came in right after me, so I didn't get that. Yeah, just like more skills on like what I'm doing after this, and not just, okay, do this for this test and that for that test.
Okay, this is a question for all three of you. And one of the things that came up last time was that the mechanism for influencing state standards is that you go to the Board of Education has some kind of like public comment time, and you can go and say, this is what I think should be part of like state standards. Is that something you all would like take time to do as students?
I mean,
If y'all had help,
yeah, I would. I would, because I'm like passionate about this type of thing, but I think, so yes, I would. I think the expectation that like that's the only way that students should be able to like get their voices heard is to like go up to the Capitol or whatever that requires. Is like, your average high school student is probably not that dedicated. Maybe they are, but like that's a lot of work. And even if you are dedicated, getting up there, then it becomes like an equity issue. It's just, yeah.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, so last time we learned that there's a way to influence the State Board of Education's list of standards that you all have to learn in school. And one of it is like finding out when they ask for public comment and then providing public comment about what you want to learn. And I wonder if that's ever something you all would be interested in, like, being involved in, or if you'd be like, whatever school says I have to learn, I guess that's what I have to do.
No, I would absolutely do that. I would absolutely do that because I feel like there's some things that I wish were like a part of a high school curriculum that like financial literacy I feel like should be in schools, because as you get older, you start working jobs. My grandma was talking to me the other day about taxes, and I was like, I have no clue what you're talking about. I think we need we also what's happening with DEI and policies affecting that. Education or classes, courses related to like more African American, more in depth, not just slavery and the civil rights movement, not just your basic Black history presentations. But I would definitely like be vocal about more curriculums and classes that we would want to see, and not just Black history, Indigenous people, the people who were on this land first. I think that's very important because we like to tiptoe around that subject. So yeah, I would be open to that. And I do think a lot of my peers who I went to school with, I think I can speak for them in saying that they do. I remember I had one classmate, her name was Amara at Mary Grove, very vocal, very passionate about what we learned in school. So I think there are some of us out there who will be willing to do that.
Yeah, I would definitely do that too. And I think a lot of people our age and people in general would do that. I think one thing that I would help with that though is if we do, it would actually make a difference. Because like if it's not really going to do anything, they're just going to like listen to us talk and then go about their business. And then a lot of people probably wouldn't think it was worth their time, but if something can show us that it would actually carry some weight, then yeah, I think a lot of people would do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and the reality is, because it's so big, it's probably pushed some people out. So what's the history about the people in DC? Like, what's the depth about the communities in DC, and how do they feel about Howard, and how are we able to give back to them? But in DPS, I would say at Mary Grove in particular, I don't know if I got the same, like, being able to learn about the communities as much. We did do projects, like passion projects with one of the organizations I was in with like TOTS and giving back to the women in that area, but I don't think at CAS I got as much, like learning about our neighborhood, where we're from. I could be mistaken, but I don't remember off the top of my head like doing intentional projects or having lessons surrounding the people in that community.
Yeah, I think Boggs did a great job in really showing us to be curious about our communities. I remember doing lots of things like Nakai said, walking to the Heidelberg Project. I remember even just walking around the area that the school was in. We had people, I was in the oral history club too, we talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood. We had people from the neighborhood come to the school. I remember there were even like people who used to be Motown singers. Like so many cool things, like people that lived across the street at the end of the year at our block party. They came and they performed with us. Like, there was just so much things that really made the community feel like it was part of the school. I think that also gave us like a sense of ownership in our community. And there's been studies done on people where it shows that if you have a sense of ownership of something or you feel included in it, it makes you like more, it makes you want to take care of it more. And I noticed that there's definitely a difference in my peers that didn't have that type of schooling when they were younger. They don't feel the same like responsibility to the community. They don't view it as theirs. And that's something that Boggs definitely taught us.
Jacob was talking about exactly what I wrote down, but this idea of like collective / community responsibility, that like we as people in the community are responsible for caring for each other, and you know, that can mean many different things. That can mean like picking up your stuff or coming over when, you know, someone's sick, whatever. But I think I really got that from this school, is that like we take care of each other. And I think that's kind of what I was hitting on earlier when you were like, when the question was around like, what do you feel like you were lacking in DPSCD? It was definitely that, like that community, that connection, that responsibility for each other. I really felt was lacking. And Boggs really taught me that. And I think it also taught me how community and like my neighborhood, my school, Detroit as a whole, like how like change, justice, revolutions require those communities, and how we need each other to like make change and move forward. And I don't think that's really something I had thought of or connected before I came to the Boggs School, and I don't always see that emphasized away from the Boggs School at DPS.
For Nakaya and Jacob, I was just wondering, do y'all think y'all respective like universities are well integrated into the neighborhoods they're in? Like, is MSU a good steward of Lansing? Is Howard a good steward of DC? Do they have a lot of opportunities that like encourage y'all to engage with the people who live in those cities?
I'm only with this. I try to, I have to be honest. So the one thing I've learned being at Howard is this term performative activism. And I cannot speak for every club, every organization, every professor, but I think we do a lot of like a little bit of community service, put it on our resume. A little bit of this, to elevate us to get this opportunity. And I will be honest and say I've heard stories of like DC, some of the community people aren't as fond of some of the students because students can be snobby. And I'm not saying that's every single Howard student, but that is something that you hear. So I have been a part of, well, besides Ready Set Success, which is a program I'm in, started in Detroit, and we do like we've gone to other schools, different people in our clubs have gone to other schools and like read to elementary students and middle school students and talked to them about college. But in terms of like older generations and connecting like the history and how they feel about Howard and what we can learn from them, I haven't experienced that thus far. I'm not saying it's not happening, but there definitely are some conversations I think about what we can be doing better as a university to implement our DC locals in the Howard University students. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, it does. Jacob, did you have anything?
Yeah, I think one thing that Emerson does pretty often is they acknowledge certain land grants, which I think has to do with like whoever was in this space before the university. That I feel like also is kind of performative. Outside of that, it's really just general community service. Kind of like Nakai said, I haven't seen anything that would connect me with East Lansing or educate me on history or the community or the people or anything like that. It's definitely, yeah, none of that.
Thank y'all. That's actually gonna wrap up the general panel discussion. So can we give them a round of applause? And now, just want to open it up to the audience. If anybody has any questions for the panelists, you can go ahead, but you gotta like speak up so they can hear you.
Okay. Do you feel ownership over making change in your communities that you're in now? Ever since you left Boggs, I feel like the theme has been like, when you were at Boggs, you know you can make change, you know you can speak up and use your voice. Since you left Boggs, do you still feel like you have that ownership over your community, and in what ways you implement that in your community? Do you feel like you needed more support in being able to like actually use those tools in the real world and where you might be the minority, you know, and how can we help support you or support our students now in being able to change the climate to be more like your thought process as opposed to getting like kind of lost in the sauce? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
So one of the things we talked about is maybe so that there's more of like a collective conversation happening, we're gonna hear all of your questions and then there's gonna be a wrap up where like the panelists can kind of either answer a particular question or give feedback overall, like as a wrap up. So if that's a question, I hear that question, Sierra, that you're asking, Miss Sierra, that you're asking the panelists about like, is their activism or community connection something that they take with them, with themselves about what they're doing? And so we'll hear that question. Is there anything else, other questions that people have? And the panelists kind of pick up whatever question speaks to them that they want to answer. So any other questions that people have or comments that they want to make? And I also just want to shout out, we have another former Boggs student in the crew and that in the audience, and that is Iron. And Hamilton, right? Iron Hamilton, who is now was it last year? Only last year, baby. Who is a freshman at Cass Tech right now. So, any other questions, comments? Let's just have at it.
Jasmine, then.
Feel free to get some food too while this is happening if you didn't
Hi
get to say.
Jacob, hi Nakaya, and hey you all on the panel. So my question is, when you left Boggs, how well connected or disconnected are you with like your peers? So like with those that you went to school with, like what are the things that you noticed, and yeah, like how connected or disconnected would you say you all are right now?
I would like to ask, so we talked a lot about how Boggs differed from high school, but what I'd like to know is college is also a whole different place. So did you feel like the lessons you learned from Boggs versus from the high school what helped you, or did both or neither help you with your college experience? What more did you, like, I guess I'm asking, what did you lean on the most? Your Boggs experience or your high school experience in helping you navigate the college world? Or was it just neither one of those helped?
I didn't grow up in Detroit. I didn't grow up in Michigan. I'm curious about whether there's something special that people who grow up in Detroit learn or need to know.
For school or in life?
Well, from school to be prepared for either later school or life.
Any, yes.
Yeah, hey, I'm curious to know, how has the work or the curriculum you've done here at the Boggs School been transformational for you as a leader and leading the next generation? You know, so there's sometimes when we take on this work, we understand who we are as a leader and we self-assess as who we are as a community partner, but we kind of forget about what is that legacy piece when it comes to passing that torch. So how has the work made you a leader or transformational leader for the generation that comes behind you?
So I'm gonna repeat some of the questions because I can tell they're having a hard time hearing them and they can decide what they want to respond to at the end. So one of the questions is, how connected do you feel to your peers from Boggs now? How connected are you with them? The second is, do you take your activism that you learned, your connection to the community with you, and how do you use it now at the school you're at? What did you lean on the most in preparing for college? Was it what you learned from Boggs or what you learned from high school? And is there something special in Detroit that Detroiters need to know and learn? Okay. All right, so those are the questions you can think about and choose to respond to.
I guess the first one is probably the easiest to answer is being connected with other Boggs students. I mean, my best friend's name is Ariel Johnson, and we've been locked in since I would say I was in 7th, she was in 8th grade. I'm still very close with Addie, who I knew prior to Boggs, who then came to Boggs. Then we ended up graduating high school together at Mary Grove. I worked with Jacob last summer with Miss Marisol for what is it called? GDYT. So there are some people we're still pretty connected. There's a Boggs group chat. So yeah, people still like, what y'all doing this weekend? What's happening this summer? Let's get together. Then there are some who I haven't talked to in like years. So I think the vast majority of us still have like 1 or 2 people who we still talk to, I think, pretty consistently.
I'd agree with that. I feel that I'm still connected with pretty much everyone that was in my class from Boggs. We had get-togethers over winter break, summer break. Like a lot of times, alumni still come to the Boggs block party at the end of the year. So it's like we still feel very connected to Boggs and to each other. I think also with the question about if we still feel connected and like ownership of our community, I think we do. One thing I wanted to add on earlier was that not only did Boggs make us feel connected to our community, but they showed us that if you put in the work and the time to invest in your community, they can actually make a difference. So like with the healing circles that Kaya mentioned, or different like group things we would do, it shows that even now, if you put in that work, it'll help. And I think I've carried that to college too. As far as the transition from Boggs to college, I think, transition to college, I think on my knowledge from Boggs and high school, I feel like it's a mix. I wouldn't say just one or the other.
I think what you said about the communities of Boggs and like being a part of the communities and feeling like we're what did you say, activists in the communities or something like that? I think as I transitioned to DC, I don't want to say I've been more timid, but I feel like part of being like an activist or like a leader in the community means knowing the community. And I feel like when you don't know the community and you try to go out and be the savior, it gives gentrifier, and that's not the vibes I'm going for. So I think for me, it would be learning more about DC, like I said, the locals, like what do they need from us instead of what we think we need to give them. And just knowing more about just who they are and where they come from. And I think that starts on campus, like finding different clubs whose mission is to kind of do that, and maybe I need to be the one to start it instead of waiting on somebody else. But yeah, so I think the community I'm in now, that's something that I'm still trying to navigate. But I do always take the like, you're in this community, you should learn about it, you should care for it, and then kind of work with the people to create solutions or like just start conversations about the spaces you're walking in every day.
I am still connected with many of my Boggs peers. I mean, many of my best friends are from Boggs. I've had a sleepover with 2 of my best friends, like, on Sunday. So, yeah. So I'm not in college right now, but it kind of made me think of the application process, where I feel like all through high school, it was kind of like, okay, your grades are what matters most, like individuality, like put that to the sideline, whatever. And then it came to applying to college, and they were like, we want to know you. And you're like, what? But, I feel like I really tapped into not only specifically writing about my Boggs experiences as something that kind of like stood out for me, but also tap into like really who I am and what Boggs taught me about who I am, when kind of circling back to, okay, my academics aren't everything, you want to know about who I am. So that was one thing. And then I also wanted to respond to the question about, do I take like my activism with me in high school? And I definitely do. It's changed because the ways in which it used to work don't really work in high school anymore. Or I guess, what am I trying to say? I definitely do. I definitely feel like a lot of my activism comes through like advocating for myself and my peers. And I feel like I have to do a lot of that in terms of like just the recent example, trying to like take this college class, or I was writing an article about how we got school laptops really late. Journalism is another way I would say I carry that with me. So I definitely do, and I think many of my peers from Boggs do. I think it's just morphed and changed. Yeah.
I have a question, and again, I'm gonna throw the question out there, and we'll talk some more, and we'll give the panelists a chance. But one question I hope you all want to answer at some point is how you feel about the future of this nation, and I mean, how you feel about the future of this nation and what you need to know, or what you think kids need to be learning in school to navigate it.
How do I feel about the future of the nation? Right now, very nervous, very nerve-wracked, very like, oh my God, what's going on? We need to call the Avengers. The Avengers. But I think something that my grandmother, anytime like something that was overwhelming that like we've talked about is like balance. So handle what you can handle, but don't overwhelm yourself and get into a space or depression or a feeling of like I can't do this anymore. So like not giving up and being able to know like this is what I can do right now, and this is what we can do together, and not feeling like you have to be the only one to take it on. Like if you see an issue, like, hey, do you feel the same way? Do you feel the same way? And coming together and thinking about it, reflecting about it, and then not just talking, but then finding solutions. I think it kind of just starts in school with having like conversations, like, because when everybody tries to ignore the problem or like we aren't speaking about it together, then it's like, am I the only person who cares about this issue? I think I'm still in a process right now of still trying to figure that out. Like, I don't have a complete answer for it, but definitely starting with the people next to you. Like, how do you feel about this? And what's an idea on how we can try to flip it?
I agree with that. I think I resonate with what Nakai said about maybe I need to be an Avenger or something like that. I think one thing that I noticed from all the things that Boggs taught us of people making changes throughout history is that it starts with people getting connected. Because 9 times out of 10, people feel the same way or they feel similar, but everyone's isolated in their own world. So for people to know that you can connect with other people and form that into making a difference, I think that's very important. I think also for people going forward, I think it's important to be critical thinkers, just like Boggs has made us. Because with media now, it's very important to understand what you're seeing in the reality of things. I think one thing I remember from Boggs that Nakaya did was she started the House of Silence. I don't even remember what the issue was that it was for, but it started with just Nakaya. She did it herself. And by the end of the day, pretty much everyone in our grade and our classrooms had joined in. And it was like, it just showed me that like it could start with one person and all of a sudden everyone agrees with it. And I think it's very important to know and to carry it with you.
Does anybody in the audience have a response?
What was the issue?
How do you feel about the world, the nation, the state of the nation, and what do you think that young people need to be learning in the schools to face it? To face the future?
I was gonna say, when it comes through that on a federal level, or maybe even on a state level, that our governments fail us, and when disaster strikes, and things are chaotic, the one thing that you always see is, and a lot of times they don't even show, is it's really people coming together to help one another out. So having a community-based learning situation here, I really think is kind of advantageous into going into this thing, because we don't really gonna know what's gonna happen with our country in the next 10, 15 years. When you look at things like the Soviet, the USSR collapsing, it's not like they knew it was gonna happen when it happened. It just kind of happened, it dissipated, and then it was now what? That very well could happen here, but at the end of the day, we need to not focus so much on the talking heads and what they're telling us, but we need to use our critical thinking to look out for one another, our neighbors, our community, and that's what's going to help get us through whatever the heck's going on with everything else here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's a myth that people can't be in community with each other. So just always remembering that we can be in community and we can help one another. But also that feeling of, I know when I went to school, it was more so this is how it is and you learn how to live within those standards. But it's important for me to teach, especially my kid, and to be a part of a community that teaches students that if this is the status quo and you don't like it, as a collective, it's your job to change it. So just making sure that we formulate a generation that is capable, willing, and interested in making things the way that they want them to be, as opposed to just living in how things are right now, which is like, I think is deeply embedded in the Boggs School and important for us to continue teaching to students.
I think that like what the kids are learning at Boggs is so important, because I remember my school experience, and honestly it felt like jail, and it felt like I was just spitting stuff out. It wasn't learning, it wasn't applying my knowledge, it wasn't learning how to critically think. And I think that's just such a disadvantage to me now sometimes, because I do get easily overwhelmed with all the negative things that are going on in the world, and it's easy to feel like it's pointless or hopeless and just feel afraid. So on top of critical thinking, this community building we're talking about is so pivotal, especially in this day and age where with a push of a button, you can get your groceries. You don't need to rely on your neighbors as much as you had to in the past. So the necessity of building a community isn't as apparent in your day-to-day life, but it's so, especially in these times, we need to really start exercising that muscle of leaning on each other to support each other and to know each other as humans, not as your neighbor or your, it's a label that you, of somebody maybe you don't even know their name. They just are the person that lives across the street or down the block. I think these are really important things you're already teaching, and I hope that, other schools would start to adopt that.
Willow and then Sarah.
I definitely echo the critical thinking, but I think in terms of like what we should be teaching kids to kind of prepare them for what's coming, is like teaching in a way that makes kids love learning. And I feel like that's something I found at Boggs. I felt like I loved learning, that what I was learning I felt connected to. And it wasn't just about doing a worksheet, it was about like really learning. And I think me and many of my peers, I mean, maybe even if like we didn't like school, we sought out learning, and that's something I still see in my Boggs School peers. And I think that's crucial now and always, but we need to keep people passionate about learning and staying educated. Because when people stop wanting to learn or stop caring to learn, then you don't know nothing, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. I agree with pretty much all the points that we've spoken about today, but I mean, my personal experience, my mom was a public school teacher, and she herself finds it difficult to operate nowadays in safety. I do believe that a community-based education is so critically important, because it doesn't just provide a space for someone or a child to be loved, but also have the opportunity to understand who they are as a human first, not like a commodity, not just some sort of computer, some sort of brain organism that gets spoon-fed information and is expected to output some sort of magical goals. You don't have to be profound to exist. You just are. So I don't know, I so far, meeting a lot of the kids and students that have been in the school and just graduated, there's an emotional resilience that I see in them that I didn't